If the market doesn't expect you to put these amazing updates, then those amazing updates are not going to make you money. Let me repeat that. If the market is not expecting you to make those amazing updates, then making those amazing updates is not going to make you money. That's the mic drop statement of the day. If the market is not expecting you to make those amazing updates, then you're going to lose money on those amazing updates. Case in point. All right, what is up? It is your friend Austin from Houston here with another exciting episode of the REI 101 call. Thank you for everybody being on the call. Huge shout out to my good friend Anna OKK putting a big deal under contract, all while vacationing in Mexico. So living the dream. So we are live. We're live on Facebook. If you see us on Facebook, you're welcome to join us for the call. My camera is cutting my face. Is that better? Okay, here we go. All right. No show next week. Next week is we might be able to squeeze an episode in, but we got Keller Williams Mega Camp in San Antonio. Thanks, Mir. Thanks for being on the call. So we're going to be talking about some of the mistakes that we're seeing right now with investors all across the board. And these are mistakes when it comes specifically to like the rehab side of things. So like putting money where money should not go and not putting money in where money should go. So how do you know where the money goes? What should you do with that money? What can you get away with not doing? So we're going to talk about that today. Now, we don't want to skip corners, but you can't always do everything, can you? So we're going to be talking about that today, but we are here to save you money. If you're in the process of buying a real estate investment, we want to make sure that you do well so you can do another one faster. And right now we are in a buyer's market. I'm going to talk about the market first before we get into our topic of discussion today. But not sure if you saw, interest rates keep going up. They keep going up. So I think a lot of people would probably agree that interest rates is an indicator. I see your crying emoji, Anna. This just means it's an opportunity to take advantage of the opportunity. So when things start going in the way we don't want, where is the opportunity? Now, interest rates hit an annual high a week ago, 7, 8, 9, 10 days ago at 6.6, and it's in between 6.65 and in between 6.67. I won't say the number for those of you who are sensitive to too many sixes. But now we're pushing 6.7 right now. If you follow the 10-year treasury, 10-year treasury is up, which may be an indicator that, I don't know, things may or may not be changing, but we're gonna see. So days on market, we are pushing 50 going into August. 50 days just for a house. This is not even, if you're trying to sell a commercial building, a multifamily, triple it right now. Triple it. And 50, that's only if the price of the listing, if it's priced to sell. So right now we're sitting on about 5.5 months of inventory. And guess what? A lot of the houses that are selling are brand new construction. So we're going to talk about today. We're going to continue the discussion and ask the question, what do these new builds got that we don't got? That us resales that we're not doing? So we'll talk about that today. So we'll get into the content. So if you're on the call or if you're on Facebook, I'm going to ask you a question, and you can type this in the box, or if you are brave enough to come out off camera or off mute. Question for you is, in your experience, where are investors misallocating funds? So when it comes to either flipping, say flipping a house, or they are buying a house and converting it to a rental. So they're buying real estate to rent it out. Maybe it's a multifamily. Even in the commercial space, I would ask, maybe it's a retail space, maybe it's a industrial flex space or office space. Where do you see investors spending money in places that they are not going to get an ROI on? So that's my question for you today. Where is money being spent on these rehabs that should not be spent? And I have a couple of ideas. So your renovation project, it's where flippers or buy and hold, you're either going to create a lot of equity or quietly hand it to a contractor. And the difference, it's almost never the craftsmanship. I'm going to be clear. It's not necessarily the craftsmanship. It's not always how well was the project done. However, it's which items in that piece of real estate were addressed. We call that the scope. It is the scope, just a box, just a list. So remember, the market has no idea what you spent. So if you're flipping a house, for instance, and we see this a lot, and we know this is true if you've ever had a seller that really wants to make sure that you understand what they did. So we did these counters, and we custom made these counters and had them, handcrafted. And you see these doors and this door trim on these doors is, we really wanted to put a lot of time and energy, and we took a lot of pride. I had an agent one time tell me that the buyer was flipping a house and they called it a labor of love. And what I heard when she said that was, I just heard the word disaster. I mean, I think it's important to love what you do. I hope that you would agree with that. But if that's the only reason you're doing it, my question is are you making money, or do you just love spending tons and tons of money and not seeing a return on that? Because there's a reason why we are called real estate investors, because we are here to make an investment, make a return on investment. And as long as we continue making returns on our investments, we get to stay in business. We get to stay employed, and we get to do it again. So what should you do? What should you not do? So so going back to the market and the perception of the market, and we've sold a lot of these houses, for instance, like flip houses to buyers, and I've done a few myself. The buyer doesn't ask, like, did you do the floors? They can just tell the floors are new, or they're going to look for what's wrong. They're going to expect everything to be perfect, first of all, or at least hope so. And in a market that we're in, where close to 50% of all inventory is brand new construction, the baseline is visual perfection. Now, that's a condition of the condition of the property, right? That's a mark of the condition. Buyers are expecting homes to be in perfect condition at this point. So that's the first thing that as investors, the condition of the property is going to be far more important than the quality of the light fixtures, for instance. So we've had a couple of builders, let's say Galveston, um, buy these, build these beautiful homes, and then put the most state-of-the-art light fixtures in, state-of-the-art electronics, smart devices, and really going above and beyond. Which in isolation, that sounds like the right approach to it, right? But they're building a 400 or $500,000 house when they are in a $200,000 market. So as we get into this discussion of scope, we're going to start with the end in mind. So when buying a house, it's always important to start with the end in mind. And the end is something that you can tangibly look at and see. And in some cases, you can actually walk around in that. And what I'm talking about is you're going to pull two or three comps or have your agent pull a couple of comps in that neighborhood and say, this is what the top of the market looks like. So we may go to a lower income area, and the top of the market may just be the AC is working and there's no leaks. It may be more of a mark of functionality and condition. Are the cabinets updated? Do they have the silent closing doors? Well, in a lower priced market, that may not be necessary. Does it matter if it's brand new flooring or is it just clean and nice? And so what you're going to do is you're going to look at what's comparing that submarket. So if you're buying in a neighborhood that does not call for anything more than blonde oak cabinets, which we all agree that's kind of an outdated feature, but there are submarkets and there's parts of Clear Lake right now where the majority of the homes selling, are built in the 60s and 70s and they still have the oak cabinet doors. Well, if that's the top of the market, there's no reason for you to replace those cabinets as long as the cabinets. Now, if they're dirty or broken or have stains and are disgusting, then it's probably likely you're going to want to replace those. So remember, the market has no idea what you spend and it does not care. Okay, so once you understand that the market does not care how much money as an investor you're putting into it, then you can kind of begin to approach the rehab project a little bit differently. So a buyer that's standing in your kitchen, it's not grading your effort. They're not looking at how hard these contractors work. They don't care. They don't care what the contractors did, how much time it took. Now, if you've ever re, removed the cabinet doors and sanded the cabinet doors and stained the cabinet doors and put them back on, you're not replacing the cabinet doors. But if you've ever done anything like that, and we have, that is a lot of work. And the reason we are putting in that much work is because we feel like we're saving money by not just replacing the cabinets. But guess what? Buyers don't care. They don't care if the owner did the work. They don't care if the owner hired a contractor. It doesn't matter. They're just looking for the condition. They may not necessarily be looking at the quality, and there is a big difference between the quality of a product and the condition of a product. And ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you this, that right now in this market, I've said this before and I'll say it again, but condition is going to trump quality. And so quality comes up a lot with what type of homes? With newer homes or older homes? You're going to see this discussed a lot when it comes to older homes, especially homeowners that have owned their home for a long time and have taken excellent care of it. They may not have the updates or the upgrades or whatever, but they've taken excellent care of it. And some of these homes that were built in the 50s and 60s, excellent quality. And the problem is they're excellent quality and they are not selling. Does that mean that the buyers are wrong? No, the buyer is the one buying. So we need to pay attention to what where the money's going right now. And unfortunately, for those imported Swiss cabinets and built-in shelves that were built to withstand a nuclear bomb back in the 60s and 70s, it's not selling anymore at this point, unfortunately. And whether you like that or not, that's the truth. So Anna has a couple of things. Design finishes, yes. So the question is, where is where are investors? Where do investors tend to overspend and put money in the wrong place? Putting too much money into the looks and not enough into the functionality. And I think she hits the nail on the head. It's the functionality of the property that really matters. It's like putting lipstick on a pig, and we've heard that phrase a lot in some cases. Investors won't fix the bones, and this is a very, very dangerous place, and we're seeing this a lot, especially with older homes. You may have a home that needs updates, but also needs a new AC and a new roof and a new foundation. Well, if you have to pick between foundation, roof, and AC, or putting in the granite countertops and updating the light fixtures and replacing the floor, if you got a foundation problem, don't put new tile floor in the house because that foundation problem, it's going to be such a mess. And I can tell you, there's a lot of buyers, they won't be able to obtain financing on a house that has a foundation issue. So don't play around with that. Address that. If the AC is about to explode, don't think that you can hide or deceive a buyer by putting brand new flooring or painting the house a very light shade of gray when that AC needs to be replaced or there's water leaking in the attic. So just like honestly, just like putting lipstick on a pig. Investors won't fix the bones. You got roof, electric, pipes, foundation repairs, AC units. Instead, go for looks. So this is something that we've seen a lot, and I can tell you that we've seen some of these investors get foreclosed on because they overspend. Because some investors have been led to believe that if you just put enough money into the aesthetics of the house, then the buyer will just ignore the bad AC or the bad plumbing issues or the electrical issues, right? So we're going to break this up into three parts. Number one is where the money actually goes wrong. So most flips do not fail on the total budget, right? So you may buy a house. We're looking at a little apartment complex. Apartment complex is probably a really good example of this because in order the approach with an apartment complex should be quite simple. What is the most money that I can make on this investment? And how much money do I absolutely need to put into it in order for that to happen? So if we buy an apartment complex for $1 million and we come up with $100,000 rehab, where's that money going? And that's the critical question that's going to make or break this deal is allocating. And this is where a lot of investors do fail. I had an 8 unit apartment complex in the great city of Alvin, and it was nice. It looked good out from the outside. It had been painted. The owner put a washer and dryer, some laundry in there, and there was a lot of nice features in it. Um, but half the ACs were so outdated that it wouldn't take the new Freon. Well, ACs are very expensive, and it's very, very tough to ask the seller in that case to replace ACs. So, could have been something that could have been prepared for. It's distributing. Maybe it's the roof. In a lot of these cases, in that same case in Alvin, it was a foundation issue. Well, Here's how not to fix a foundation issue. You can't just spread mud on the cracks and paint over it. And I think Anna, you're on the call. Have you seen that before? They just spread the mud over the cracks, paint over it, and they just expect that the next buyer's not going to say anything. Not only is the next buyer going to say something, but you're going to have tenants that are going to be complaining about it the whole time. So that $100,000 budget where investors are failing on is the allocation. So when you are buying, so let's talk about when you are buying. Here's my recommendation. Your lender is going to lend if you're going to buy a multifamily property first. So we'll talk about multifamily and then I'll give you a single family. On the multifamily side, your lender is going to lend based on the current income that that property is generating. So I recommend to all buyers and investors to start with that number in mind. So for instance, if the property is generating $80,000 and they're asking for $1 million, well, if it really is, that's an 8 cap, $80,000. Now, if it's generating $80,000 and they're asking 1.5 million, well, I'm going to offer $1 million. And when they ask, why are you coming in so low? I'm going to say, first of all, am I low or are you high? That's the first question. Second of all, my lender and pretty much any lender on the planet is going to have certain income requirements for this property, and at $80,000, the best that me or anybody else, and if you understand this and you can explain this to your seller, it gives you a foot up. So you're going to start your offer. So keep in mind at this point, we're not talking about rehab or cost or foundation or reflecting. That is not part of the conversation at this point. Step one is to get under contract. And the value of that property is going to be based on the income that it produces. Same could be said for a house potentially, but we'll stick with the multifamily because it's actually a little easier because on the multifamily you can see that it's generating a certain amount of money. So once you get under contract, and I suggest an 8 cap or greater, try to get that at an 8 cap or later. And that's when you have your due diligence. And so what are we looking for on the due diligence? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to see, are my rents, the rental income that I'm charging, is that up to market? So if I have an apartment complex, I have 8 2-unit 2-bedroom units. I have 8 of them in a little 8-unit apartment complex. I'm going to look at what apartments.com, I'm going to apartments.com, HAR. I'm going to talk to my agent. I'm going to say, okay, what are these other, 800 square foot, two bedroom apartments? What are they getting in rent? So I need to know that. So I'm going to go around and I'm going to find out what those properties are getting. And as long as they're in this similar geographic area, and those apartments are were built at similar ages or similar times, I'm going to look at what the comps are charging. So if the comps are charging 1,000 and I'm at 800 for the one that I'm buying, that's actually a really good thing. So when rents are under market, I know that there's room for improvement. Now, you're not going to be able to just walk into the place and expect everybody to start paying 1,000 just because you bought it. Because there's a couple of things that have to happen between the point that you buy the property and they're paying you $800 a month in rent and the point that you get it to where they're paying $1,000 in rent. So the first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at what do these other apartments on the comparables look like. So you may be in a market where every apartment complex in that area has granite countertops and has brand new brass, or what's the trendy thing right now is the gold light fixtures. You've seen these really nice fancy gold light fixtures with the LED lights. They have stainless steel um like appliances, like the stove is stainless steel, and they have a stainless steel fridge, and it's all nice, and there's like one little green plant in the corner, and it's just everybody's happy. The danger in this point is focusing on the aesthetics, because what you got to do first, the first at the top of the budget, you need to check the big ticket items. You need to check that foundation. Check the foundation, check the roof, ACs, plumbing, electrical. And right there, you may come to the point where like, this is going to cost $60,000 to get those items to become more functional. So right there, what I'm going to do at that point is I'm going to retrade. Retrade. If you don't know what this word means, I'm going to tell you. So retrade is once you are under contract. So in this case, I have $1 million property. I know it needs $60,000 of immediate work in order to be functional. I've got a couple of options at that point. I can come down on the offer, and so instead of offering 1 million, I may offer 940 or 920, a little bit less, or I may ask for the seller to provide a credit toward closing in order to cover those costs. So that's a very common thing, but we got to get the money. So notice that we're not even starting with the budget. We're just trying to take an assessment of the work that's needing to be done on that property in order for it to be functional. By the way, by addressing those functionality items, what you're doing there, you're not justifying a rent increase. You're you're keeping tenants from leaving. You're making sure that you have enough runway to keep the rental income sustained. So by replacing a leaky roof that's 30 years old, you're you're kind of bringing it up to par. You're trying to bring it up to par. Now, going back to the comps, if those comps have the stainless steel appliances and the white granite countertops and the gold light fixtures, guess what? You got to do the same thing. You can't expect for tenants in that market with options. And yeah, we're in a buyer's market right now with 52,000 single family homes on the market. The rental market is the same way right now. Tenants have a lot of options when it comes to renting. And so when you have an apartment complex on the market, guess what? You are competing with other apartment complexes. In a lot of cases, they're next door or across the street. They're all over the place. And when a tenant goes in, walks through a an apartment, they're looking at other apartments as well. So it's really important that you kind of keep that in mind, because it helps you answer the question like, what is the tenant actually looking for? Well, if all the other apartments in that market, on that street, in that neighborhood have the white granite countertops and the stainless steel and the gold fixtures, you should probably expect that the roof is decent too and it's not leaking water. You should probably expect that it's cold in the house whenever they turn on the AC. You should probably expect that when they put something on the ground, like a plant, that it doesn't tip over because the property is crooked. So you've got to add those updates into your budget as well. So once you come kind of get an idea of, the functional items, then the aesthetic items, that you can come up with a budget based on that. That's when I'm going to take this list and say, okay, in order for me to compete with all these other properties in the area and get these rents up to where they need to market rent, I need these 10 or 20 or 30 items addressed. What you have to do while you're in that due diligence period is you got to get a price tag on every single item. For some reason, there is this thing with contractors, and I think I saw Javier on the call. I know Javier knows better than to do this, but there is this thing where for some reason a lot of contractors will just be like, "Oh, the whole thing's going to be $100,000." And what we need is we need each item um, um, what is the word I'm looking for? We need a price associated with every single item, and then we're going to take that add it up, take that number, go back to the seller, and renegotiate based on how much work it needs because we want to get that. So remember, we're starting with the in order to offer the right amount, in order to get a great deal that is realistic, a realistic deal, not a lowball deal, but a realistic deal that's going to be a win-win for everybody. You're going to start with your offer, which is solely going to be based on the income that it's actually producing. The number two, you're going to look at comparable properties in the area. Take note of the features that they have. You're going to get your inspection done. You're going to get a very clear picture of the functionality of the roof and the foundation and the electric and the plumbing. And then you're going to come up with lists. These are all the things that I have to do step by step in order to compare with that. Add the cost of that whole budget, and then you're going to go and renegotiate with the seller. And you'll do that while you're under contract. The seller may be open to giving you some of it, may be open to giving you all of it, or they may be open to giving you none of it. Should you walk away if they give you nothing? Well, you're going to have to make that decision for yourself. But at least going into it, you know. So your primary list, get the foundation fixed, get the roof fixed. So I'm being a dead horse. So moving forward. So here's a question for everybody on. So if you're on the call, how do you decide whether a line item raises rent? So if you want to answer this question, you can put this in the chat box, or if you want to come off mute. How do you decide whether a line item raises rent, whether it raises value, whether it removes risk, whether it lowers costs, and what do you do when it does none of those? And I'll read that again. How do you decide whether a line item raises rent? How do you decide if it raises value or removes risks? How do you decide if an item lowers the cost? And what do you do when it does none of those? So, how do you decide whether a line item raises rent? The answer here, you're going to go back to the comparables. You're going to see what the properties that your competition have, what are they doing over there? So you can only remember this, that you can only raise the rent as high as the market will allow. So if you're in a market where your 2-bedroom units are being leased at $1,000, there's nothing you can do after that point to get more than $1,000. Nothing. You can put the gold fixtures, and if you look at the comps, and here's where I think a lot of investors fall into a trap. Unless the comps have the gold light fixtures in the comps, like your comparable, putting gold light fixtures is not going to help you. So if you look at the neighboring properties and they don't have white countertops and they all have Formica, and that's the top of the market, guess what? The market's telling you, keep the Formica. If the market has yellow paint and yours has yellow paint, don't worry about painting it. Maybe do some touch-ups, maybe let it look good. If you're trying to decide whether or not to pull the carpet out, look at the comps. If there's carpet in the comparable properties, just keep the carpet in there or put some nicer carpet in there. So you can save a whole lot of money by identifying with what the market is demanding and understanding that if the market doesn't expect you to put these amazing updates, then those amazing updates are not going to make you money. Let me repeat that. If the market is not expecting you to make those amazing updates, then making those amazing updates is not going to make you money. That's the mic drop statement of the day. If the market is not expecting you to make those amazing updates, then you're going to lose money on those amazing updates. Case in point. So, next, why is the resale premium the softest of the four buckets? And how do you research it honestly instead of optimistically? The resale premium. So, what we're doing there is we're asking ourselves, okay, I've got this $1 million property. The rents are 20% below, the vacancies are 20% low, but it needs $100,000 worth of improvements. And what you're trying to get to is, okay, if I improve these rents and I improve the vacancy and I improve the condition for an investment perspective, if you can get that $80,000 net operating income and you can make that improvement. So at $80,000, if we're looking at eight caps, the value of the property is $1 million minus the deferred maintenance, the cost of the roof and all that. So at $80,000. Now, if you can get that 80,000 and increase it by 50% over, 2 years. So you're going to get those rents up, those $800 rents up, you're going to get them up to 1,000. You're going to improve the vacancy. And right now in Houston, vacancy is at 12% in the multifamily space. I don't know if you knew that, but it's at 12%. That's another thing you need to look at when buying these multifamilies is the vacancy rates, because the vacancies, it's going to be hard. The only way to raise the vacancies above market is by lowering the rent. So if vacancy is at 12%, and look at the submarket, because there's certain submarkets that may be a little bit higher, a little bit lower. But if your market is at 12%, um, you're not going to be able to, you're not likely going to be able to, it shouldn't be expected at least to get the vacancy lower than that and still have a market price for the lease listing. So going back, so I'm buying a property right now that's generating a net operating income of $80,000. And my goal is over the next 2 years, 3 years, whatever, it's to improve it by 50%. By A, improving my rental income. B, by improving my vacancy. If it's greater than 12%, I can get up to 12%. And C, by finding alternative sources of income. Maybe it's laundry, maybe it's storage unit. There's a lot of different ways that you can, maybe it's parking. We've seen some properties recently where they're able to charge certain, certain prices for parking, and certain markets support that. Some don't, some do. You go downtown Houston, paid parking is a normal thing. You go out to, the west of Fort Bend County, and it may not quite be the same, but you get that 50%, and now your 80,000 is looking like 120,000. Well, when I divide that by 8% cap, you just improve the value of that property from $1 million to $1.5 million. And that's where the power of this is because you just saw something, and this is a very practical and reasonable outcome on an investment like this. If you understand these numbers, if you understand the vacancy rates, if you understand what the market rental rates are, and if you understand the cost that it's going to take to get the property to that point, then you can project outward 2 to 3 to 4 5 years what it's going to take to improve the value of this property by 50% from 1 million to 500,000. Um, that's a very simple outcome to that. And yeah, you're not going to make a 50% return on every investment, but if you take in consideration, here's the magic bullet. If you take in consideration that you're financing this with 20 to 25% down, you're not spending $1 million, you're spending $250,000. You just tripled your money by doing that. So that's where real estate investing becomes very, very powerful. So, most common misallocation you see right now, I think Anna's on the call. Her and I agree. It's the non-functional items. It's the aesthetic items. Is it the light fixtures? Is it the granite countertops? Is it putting a very trendy mirror that you found from a resale shop in the middle of nowhere? I don't know. But we see all sorts of things, and sellers, they take a great deal of pride in the uniqueness of something that they have done. And it's really hard for sellers in that position to accept the fact that the buyer just doesn't care. Just doesn't care. Does it look nice? If it looks nice and it works, the buyers are usually pretty happy. Tenants are usually pretty happy. So, where's the most common misallocation? Yeah, it's the aesthetic side of things. Does it mean that you shouldn't? No, it means you need to look at the comps and do what they do. And that's the simple answer to it. When is a fixed defect a reason to change the scope? And when is it a reason to not buy the deal at all? Okay, we're going to address this and we're going to wrap up. But a fixed defect, when is it a reason to change the scope? And when is it a reason to not buy the deal at all? When do you need to terminate? Well, the easy answer to that is big ticket items. If you have a massive foundation issue that's just going to keep getting worse, and you get a quote to repair the foundation, it comes out to be $40,000, for instance. Maybe it's a $40,000 rehab foundation job. If that seller is like just completely unwilling to contribute toward that, um, you may still be able to make some money. But if it's a numbers game, if the cost of the necessary rehab items, yes, foundation's always necessary if it's bad. If the cost of those necessary, I mean, if it kills the deal, if it puts you in a negative cash flow, or if it causes the financing, I mean, that's probably the easiest litmus test. If the cost of that repair puts you in negative, um, then you got to terminate. Like if the lender's not going to lend on it, it's going to terminate. The other thing is the lender is going to order an appraisal, uh, and the appraiser who conducts the appraisal is going to come up with a price tag. And if you're under contract to purchase that property at $1 million and they tell you it's worth $850,000, we're going to renegotiate. Buyers typically not going to want to, and usually not going to be in a position to make that difference. So that is that. So the over improvement trap is a trap that's real. It's something that I wanted to hit on, because it is something that we see a lot of clients, both on the multifamily space, even in other commercial spaces, but single family homes, we see this a lot. It's more of a mindset piece, I think, for a lot of people. Um, we live in this um, better homes and gardens, you know, TLC Learning Channel kind of mindset where Chip and Joanna Gaines are going into a house and then get all these ideas. And these shows are so heavily focused on the creativity, um, that it's really not educational at all. And I think a lot of investors, especially new investors that love these shows, and they're fun shows. I'm not against them, but you got to understand, like, this is a numbers game at the end of the day. A lot of investors, they get caught up in, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to add these different things. And the over improvement trap is a real thing. So the market has to agree with what you want to do. Just because you want to put some really expensive curtains and replace the windows, windows are another thing. And just because you want to put the gold light fixtures and other things, that the market is not expecting that from you, you don't need to do that. And in many cases, spending money like that's going to cost you money because the market's not going to reward you for going above and beyond on the rehab project. So we're going to finish with that. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Alberto and his wife are on vacation. Hope everybody's getting their vacation in before the kids go back to school, which is like for some kids have already gone back. My son goes back on Wednesday. And thank y'all for being here. I am your friend Austin from Houston, helping you to make the most out of your real estate investments. Do you have a suggestion for a future episode? Please comment. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let us know what what are you wanting to learn? Do you have a deal that you want us to analyze? Albert and I would love to do that for you on the show. And keep tuning in because we want to help you make money. Love you guys. Have a wonderful day. Bye.